Hi, welcome to this week's blog. You know, everybody's talking about the conventions, whether it be the Republican convention or the Democratic convention, but that's the talk of the town right now. And when you start talking about the future of our country, you have to ask the question, what direction is our country headed? You know, Scripture tells us through the book of Daniel, over 2,500 years ago, God gave Daniel a vision, and in that vision, he had a vision of 4 beasts. Scriptures tell us that the 3 of the beasts were empires that would come and have already gone. They're historical to us now, Greece and Rome and Persia, but that 4th kingdom is yet to come. And through Daniel's vision, through Scripture, we're told there will be a day when there will be a global economy, where there will be a global leader, where there will be a global military, where there will even be a global religion. So the question to ask now is our country headed in that direction, to where things are more global and less domestic? And what I want to do today is share with you 4 documents to really understand what direction our country's headed. If you remember a year ago, August of 2011, everybody was concerned about the debt ceiling. Were they going to raise the debt ceiling? Every news broadcast, every newspaper, that's all they talked about. And it went up to, I think it was August 2nd. They had that day, if they didn't raise the debt ceiling, the government was going to shut down. You all remember that, just a year ago. Well, what happened since then? They decided they would raise the debt ceiling, but they would put together what they called a super committee, and that super committee would have to come up with cuts. And if they could not agree on cuts by November of 2011, they were going to put some automatic cuts in place. A good portion of that coming from our defense budget. So that was the incentive, because no one wanted to see our defense budget cut. Do you remember that? That was just a year ago. Well, since then, what's happened is, I'm going to share 4 documents with you. These documents can easily be accessed online. In fact, in this blog, I will put the link where you can look at them yourself. This first document is called the Unified Security Budget. And what this document says is that the U.S. government is going to scale back our military. We're going to cut back our ground forces by 20%. It says we're going to reduce our Navy fleet by 20%. We're going to cut back from 12 aircraft carriers to 8. We're cutting our Navy fleet from 285 ships to 230. So we're cutting out 55 ships. 313 is recommended, by the way. They're cutting ballistic missile submarines. 14 were planned. They're cutting 8, leaving only 6. They're reducing the Air Force by 2 combat units. They're cutting helicopters. They're ceasing all further developments of missile defense. If you remember not too long ago, there was a meeting between Obama and the Russians, and that was one of the topics. They're going to implement what they call R2P. This document talks about it. That's called the responsibility to protect. And what this is, it's placing more blue United Nations helmets on U.S. soldiers, on our troops, and making them more peacekeeping troops, not U.S. soldiers. So this document talks all about that. The second document I want to share with you is called the Green Dividend. It's our foreign policy. And what this talks about is the savings that we get from the defense cuts. What we should do is use that for green stimulus. That means we're going to transfer Americans' wealth from America to foreign countries. So that's all in this document. Again, you access that online. The third document I want to talk about is called Climate Change, Migration, and Conflict. Now, this document says that climate change is a direct threat to our national security. It says if we help develop climate change for other countries, then countries like Iran won't build nuclear weapons. And Russia and China will become more peacekeeping nations if we help them develop things that's green and climate controlled. They say in this document, one of the points that they make is that the Arab Spring happened. Remember the Arab Spring? That all happened because of rising food prices. Well, that's not true at all, and that's a totally different blog, but that's what this document says. And the fourth one I want to share with you is called our Department of Defense Review. And again, you can see it's a heavy document, but you can get it online. The link will be in the blog. And this calls for increased drone usage, both domestically and internationally. And we're going to shift operational landscape, it says. This document says that we're going to cut back our military and again use them for UN peacekeeping forces, and it says we're going to address and redirect resources for a balanced global effort to help poor countries with climate issues. An example of that is we're going to spend $100 million in the West Bank. There's a building called the Safer Center. It's a building that we built over in the West Bank. And the Safer Center, in fact, I'll put a link to that too. We can see an article and a picture of this. What they did with this building to make it more green is that they use energy efficient windows, and they put window shades on, and they had a collection for rainwater so they could water the gardens and stuff, which is very common in the Middle East anyhow. They reused wood, so they did several things to call it more green and climate control, thinking if we pump $100 million into the West Bank, it's going to help. Is it going to help America at all by doing that? That's where our government's going. So just from a year ago, when we said we would have defense cuts, when we would do these things, this is the direction our country's going. So as you're hearing people talk about things at the conventions, as you're hearing about promises, as you're hearing about the future, ask yourself the question, what direction is our country headed in today? We are becoming more global and less domestic. Our military is becoming weaker, not stronger. 2,500 years ago, God told through his prophet Daniel that this day would come. Are we living in that day now? God bless you. Have a great week.